What is it like to be like, damn, I'm a failure right now?
That was like the number one feeling that like I'm left with. And I totally felt like a failure.
Peter Dunn, welcome into Frere Ford, man. It's good to see you again.
Thanks, bud. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
And I wish it was under slightly better pretenses, but I'm really excited to have this conversation today. I guess just right off the bat, man, what are we going to be talking about today?
We're talking about how I got fired. As I tried to put it to a friend, strapped to a missile and fired off the face of my employment. And honestly, it happened in very much like ripping the Band-Aid off the wound fashion. So I think it's a pretty grisly version of something that too many people, unfortunately, have to deal with. Like getting fired is a very real thing. And you do a great job of opening this up for people to kind of tell their stories and be authentic and give a real look into the 20s life and beyond. You're great about trading a part of it of yourself too. So I just figured it would be a good medium to come on and talk about what it's like to get fired and from a kind of pretty specific job at that.
Look, I think it's important we have this type of discussion because a lot of people are going through this, like I said, especially now. I keep reading articles about how folks our age and even younger are getting laid off in droves from industries like yours, industries like technology. And look, employers want to sugarcoat this and make it sound great and all, and we're on to bigger and better things. But the truth is this is hard shit, man. This is hard shit. So what were you doing and how did you get into it?
Well, I was working in film and TV out here in Los Angeles. Specifically, I worked at a talent agency as a literary media agent, which kind of bread and butter of that means I represented intellectual property and sold packages around that for film, TV, documentary, and what have you to be sold to the studios and developed by producers, writers, filmmakers, the likes. And so I was kind of an aggregator of stories, putting them together with all of the creative elements that get something sold and then selling that to a Universal or a Disney or a Fox or what have you.
And what I have to say on that is, I mean, look, that's a pretty unique job, right? And I know you didn't fall into this by accident. And I also know that, at least anecdotally from what I've heard, you really got to climb the ladder here. This is a fairly thankless entry-level role. Can you talk about, A, how you got that position, and then B, what it was like in those early stages?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that like Hollywood is a kind of a grind and a brutal ladder to call, and just kind of even simplifying it just to calling it Hollywood, because a lot of people want to do it, and there are not that many jobs, and the ones that for people like the artists, the writers, and the filmmakers and the actors, like it's a hard enough path for them to get their talent seen. When you're not on that side of it, and you're more on the business side of it. And kind of really, it's about your opinion and what you can convince people. The first few years of it, I came up through the usual path, the agency mailroom. It's a kind of fabled pit of despair, but it really is like, it's the crucible where you learn things. You learn who's who like you definitely don't want to piss off and who you probably shouldn't piss off and who you can go ahead and piss off. And there aren't that many of those. But so I came up through the mailroom. I was an assistant first up until the pandemic. And then when they laid off everybody there, I freelanced for a while. So I've been through this before. It's the nature of entertainment. Luckily, that one, we had the fat stimmy checks during COVID. Then I freelanced for a little while with production companies. There's mostly reading scripts and writing my thoughts about them. And then I got a shot at another agency as an assistant again and rose up there, was assistant for 6 months and then coordinator, which is like an in-between role between assistant and agent. I was there for about 18 months. And then I got promoted to agent in 2023.
Roger that. Okay, so you were like a full-blown agent for, let's say, a little over a year. In your mid-20s, which, by the way, I think is a testament to your talent. Like, you're in a unique role with probably a unique skill set that you have to possess. The silver lining here is I think you've probably gotten some decent experience, but I think we'll get into how it ended.
Oh, man, I looked at it and I laughed. When I called my dad when I got fired on a Friday, I called him and I was like, if nothing else, like I was a hotshot Hollywood agent for 8 months. Like,
100%.
And that was fun. I like the situations I found myself in, the rooms I was in, the conversations I was having. I never thought that I would get to have a part of that. I thought they were cool when I read about them, and I always was curious about how those kind of conversations happen. But when you're there in it and you're kind of got the imposter syndrome on one shoulder,
Yep.
and like if I may, fuck it, let's ride on the other shoulder.
Yep.
Let's see how far we can take this until somebody fires you. And that brings us to the main event, I guess, which was, I guess if I could sum it up in short, it's a combination of, and I'll talk more about it. One, the politics game that I, in hindsight, can totally see I didn't play right. And I'll say why in a second. And the other side of it was, I'd misread one of those people you definitely shouldn't piss off and those people you probably shouldn't piss off. And it really just comes down to I pushed too hard for the best thing for my client because I was in a situation where I kind of had the leverage to do that in a competitive bidding war. So I was really pushing for my client to get paid what I felt he deserved. But when you're dealing with kind of A+ level clients of colleagues, they are going to be competitive with you. So part of the political thing I didn't understand kind of was that colleague does not always mean teammate. As pessimistic as kind of a view as that is to have, it's a learning thing that, there are times to confide and let people in and be transparent. And then there are times to play things close to your vest. I never would have been the agent that was deceitful, but there are times you don't give the whole picture to somebody that you don't know exactly what their motives are and what they want to see at the end of the day.
Yeah, man. I think, first of all, the way you paint this is brilliant. This is something that I struggle with big time. Like, office politics have never been my thing. I'm a fairly open book, and so I actually think it's been challenging for me to see other colleagues rise up the ranks quicker or maybe be treated better off of things that I didn't believe were their true selves. So that's something I'm learning. It sounds like you're taking lessons from this too. What I've also heard, though, in regards to the layoffs is the fact that, companies are doing these in droves, and when they are laying kids off, it's just like a quick Zoom call or a phone call, and then the plug is pulled. Can I just ask you, if I take you back to that moment, what was that like? And further, as far as how you had to communicate with your clients, it's a very personal business. Like, how did you tell this story to them that, hey, I'm no longer here?
Yeah, it's a pretty ironic firing. So I had my mid-year evaluation coming up, and it kept getting pushed by my department heads. And then it suddenly landed for 5:00 on a Friday. And I was like, that doesn't feel good. That's probably not ideal. And then it was a Zoom call too. And ironically, I was the only one in the office for this. It was the start of it wasn't a long weekend actually, but it was just Friday evening. Both of my bosses, the department heads, were already starting their weekends away, and I was sitting in the office at 5:00 on Friday.
Yeah, the irony of that, right?
Yeah, and then I joined, and HR was on there as well, and I was like, this is not going to go well for me. I didn't expect it, honestly. In that call, I didn't expect it to say like effective immediately, you're terminated, and that's what it was. It was the kind of, by the end of the Zoom call, it was locked out of my email account. Leave your ID badge and we'll mail your stuff back to it. It was real whiplash for me.
It really sounds surreal. It just sounds very odd, especially for a place that you probably poured your heart and soul into, which we'll get there in a second. But can I just ask you, because like, I see Instagram Reels and TikToks about individuals that are fired like this with no empathy or anything. What was the actual dialogue that took place? Were they just like, hey, Peter, really sorry we're letting you go? Or was there any back and forth?
I wish, what I really kind of wish in hindsight is that I had pushed back more. I think because it was such a blindside. I mean, to be totally honest, I got on my eval expecting like some pats on the back and attaboys and like, you're doing a great job. Cause, and like, now I'll give myself the freaking pat on the back. I was frankly. So it was really bizarre. That's why it kind of became clear to me that it wasn't about the job that I was doing. It was the way that I was doing it in their eyes. And this is the other political like element that we'll talk about. But the dialogue itself, the two reasons that it kind of came down to were them just saying, one, that they cited the me pissing off the person I shouldn't have pissed off as the straw that broke the camel's back. And the other part of it being, I'm not a fit in the team, which that's the one that stung the most for me. Because I had built my entire kind of reputation around not only in the office, but kind of it's an all relationships game in this industry. So I was very mindful to, my version of office politics was work your ass off, do really good work, treat everybody with respect and kindness and be well liked. And nobody has a bad thing to say about you. And they say he does great work.
Well, that's by the way, what I would assume it to be as well. I don't think that's irrational. in any way.
No, that's kind of the meritocracy version we're sold on, but a lot more of it, especially maybe more so in entertainment than in other industries, are, who do you make feel special? My bosses felt that I was running when I should have been asking them to hold my hand. And my defense of that, and that I didn't get to say on the call, was, guys, it's not that I think I know everything. It's that I just know who to ask my questions to. I had like half a dozen mentors that I would go with specific questions to. What I did a lot of sports content. So I'd go talk to the head of that department to really understand who should I be calling to get this meeting set, or who should I call to pitch this series. And they just kind of at the end of the day didn't like that I wasn't going to them.
One thing that it's interesting you say I was running and wasn't holding their hand. I've encountered this a bit in my career as well. I feel like if I were a hiring manager or somebody that was managing, let's say you, I might want somebody that really wants to like be set free and break those chains and try to sprint, make something happen. Even if that doesn't mean that I, as his direct boss, is going to get the question every time. It feels to me like there's some ego that exists in this industry. And I do feel like at all firms, like ego is a real thing. And is it really our responsibility to pander to that? Maybe the answer is yes. I don't know, but clearly it didn't work out in your favor.
No, you're totally right. I think everybody wants the hustler and the go-getter, but I think there's a caveat to that, which is you can't ever let yourself look like you're done learning. I think especially at the stage that we're at in our careers, because there's sort of like that threshold you get to where you're like, first you feel like I know nothing, and then you catch yourself a few times kind of sounding the part, and like you're on a roll with somebody you're explaining something to, and you're like, oh wow, I actually gotta get this. And then as soon as you're in that spot where you're not looking for your like weak spots anymore and asking people like, hey, can you like, I know a little bit, can you like really actually teach me what this is? They want that, and without it, it's really easy, I think, to come off looking entitled or like you think you've got it all figured out. And I sure as shit like didn't. Like no part of me thinks that I was a master by then. I just wasn't doing a good enough job showing, what they wanted to see from a young agent.
And I think part of that too at any competitive company is the fact that senior level professionals do have egos, but B, I think to assume good nature in people is to assume that like they do want to help you, I guess, right? In theory. And so to not go ask for help, I think A, hurts their feelings, but B, also makes them feel like you're doing yourself a disservice by not seeking their guidance. Mm-hmm. So I've heard you talk about this industry for a long time. I mean, we went to college together and you've been kind of in this industry. Even prior to us graduating, you were in and around this space. It feels like you've dedicated a lot of your professional energy, frankly, a lot of your life energy to this space. So can you just talk about, I don't know, what's it like to really have work and life blend in some degree? And how has your perception of yourself or your self-identity changed, if at all, as a result of this incident?
It's a really good question. Because that's the thing that hit me the hardest. Like I went to a wedding like a week after the getting fired, and it was my girlfriend's friend group, and they had heard about what we do. So to have to the conversation over and over again of like, no, I'm not in that cool sounding job anymore, is like it's a seriously humbling process to go around and explain, and you kind of realize very quickly it's not worth doing the sugarcoat. I got laid off. Oh, they were doing layoffs. It would like I got fired.
Well, I appreciate your honesty. That's what we're about here on Forever Forward. And you're like, look, straight up, this is the deal. They didn't want me anymore, and I don't work there.
But to the identity question, like, I grew up loving movies and TV, like more than anything. I got in the industry because I was like, I wanted to make my Lord of the Rings. Like, they are the best, my favorite movie. I know we've spent.
And I have a question for you, if I may, just an aside. Have you seen the extended editions of them or no?
Yeah, I just.
And do you believe they're the better version, or are you happy with the? See, I actually disagree, and this is a conversation for another time. But I actually
for the first movie and the second movie, absolutely better. The third one, there's a little bit too much extra. But first and second movies, hands down, they are the better versions.
Well, you as the agent here, I will trust your guidance, but I believe all the standard editions are bad. Former agent. Either way, so yeah, I mean, it seems like you probably had a bit of an identity crisis. Maybe you're going through one right now.
Totally. I mean, when I got to the other on the other side of the firing, I was questioning, like, do I really want to be doing this anymore? Was I too close to to the product? Was I seeing the sausage get made too closely? And it is disillusioning. I think there's a part of me that has less of a love for movies and TV than I did before. I think just knowing a bit more of like, who's worked on what, how did this get made, what didn't get made because this like really commercial sounding third one in the series got made. Like there are times that you just start to get like a little jaded, but I've realized now, and it's been about a month since it happened, a little less. And just feeling like, no, I do love it. Like I love working with artists and I love the storytelling and I love the collaboration of it and the competition of it. Like in equal measure, you get to do both. You're competing against a market that is always hard with millions of other people that are also trying to fight for the same like release windows or slots or even just like development openings on a producer's schedule. And so I love it all, and the chaos and the fact that if everything goes perfectly, there's something that really exists out in the world. If you sell a movie and that gets made because you put the pieces together in the right way that someone else, everybody could see the picture, like that can't go away. And I love that idea of it, that it's kind of like an indelible mark that you can leave. So I'm not done.
One beautiful thing about your industry is that when you create something like from scratch, as you've mentioned, it exists in perpetuity. You can always look back and say, oh, that was created or that was produced because I had a say in that. And it sounds like to me, this hasn't rattled your career ambitions. You still want to be part of good media. Is that true? You're not going to step away from this industry because you had this bump in the road?
Totally. Yeah, I think my position in it might change. And I say all of this with having absolutely zero idea what the future really holds. I think there's a very big possibility I have to like take a step backwards career wise, like hierarchy in order to go forwards again. And that's a big pill to swallow, especially after like we talked about, how much kind of sacrifice goes into it. I think a lot of it, I'll have to generate a lot of my own for a while, just kind of be pavement and connect with people that I've worked with that, we were like-minded and said like, let's see what we can do together. Working at the agencies for all of the burnout and grit that it like rubs into your eyes, it's structured and feels fairly stable up until it's not. And being outside of that system now is definitely kind of feels scary. And I don't have a behemoth company behind me to say I'm with them, so you should take me seriously. That's all very daunting. But part of me is also like, that's the kind of real distilled version of it, is just having to kind of put the pieces back together.
Absolutely, man. And look, you spoke to it a bit just now. I know, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Hollywood and the industries around it, it's very intense, right? It's fast paced. People are crunching. The hours are long. It can be thankless at times. To anybody listening that either wants to pursue a career in that or maybe is in it right now, do you think there are benefits to, existing in a culture like that of Hollywood? And, I guess as you look back, are there positive takeaways that you've had from this entire experience?
It's all positive, except for the one glaring negative of how do I keep the roof over my head. But no, I mean, like there are times that I was like, where all movies are crap now and on TV sucks. But like, I know you have felt in your job, and I know for sure you felt it in this platform here. There's just like when you really love something and you're willing to work for it, when it moves forward an inch, not even all the way to the finish line, you just get it a little bit further. It feels so gratifying and rewarding. True. And there were more days that it felt like I couldn't see the finish line, let alone move something forward. But having a client put their livelihood in your hands, say like, I trust you to go represent me and my work and take this to the next level. You know that I have to feed my family, and I've got like a livelihood to keep up here. When that would pay off, it was amazing. So I'd absolutely say like, if you believe in like, there's tons of problems with Hollywood right now. It's an industry definitely like that is hurting, and it's shifting in a million ways, but it's also opened up so incredibly. Like the democratization of tools that can help filmmakers make like amazing production value projects, and their ability to collaborate with people on the other side of the world to tell stories. It's an incredibly exciting time in the industry. So I think like, yeah, hell yeah. Like I started in the industry with the writers all firing their agents. As soon as that got fixed, COVID hit. And then as soon as COVID ended and everyone got back together, the writers went on strike. And then right after that, the actors went on strike. It's like there hasn't been a calm period, and everyone keeps talking about the new normal. Like there isn't. It's just constantly changing and evolving. So jump in, and like everybody's kind of struggling with the same setbacks. Figure out how to make them work for you, and it's an incredibly rewarding career.
I love to hear you say that too, because I feel like you could have gone completely sour, right? Like I'm not doing this again, but I feel like you've taken away some real positives, and it sounds like, as somebody that knows relatively nothing about the industry, it presents its own very unique challenges. But also, like, being able to be in your mid 20s and, as you said, like, represent somebody with their passion project. I mean, that's a big responsibility for somebody our age, and it's unique. And I think it's a special thing to be able to have done. And I have no doubt that you'll continue to do that, whether it's at a large agency or for yourself. Who knows? But you'll do it somewhere. So I can imagine that, look, when that Zoom call hung up, you probably had an idea in your head of how the next month was going to go or how you were going to feel. And I'm sure some of that is probably true. But is there anything that surprised you about the last 3-4 weeks, or any ways you're feeling that you didn't expect to feel?
Well, one of the things that it surprised me and it didn't surprise me, but it's definitely the thing that will stick with me, is how quickly people will support around you, whether they've like worked with you recently or not for a while and they've heard, or how close that you were to them when you were around. People really kind of reveal themselves in these sort of moments, and having a network around is like those people really make you feel safe, even when you're in a bit of a free fall. So that was one of the things that'll stick with me. But what I wasn't expecting to feel, honestly, is like this real split where part of me says I was doing things right. You know, I came up in like the grind of it. I got like fired or laid off once, because that time wasn't a real firing. I went through that once. I got my way back in, a foot in the door, and I climbed up those ranks again. And then I was doing it well. I shouldn't be in this position. I shouldn't have to go back to like zero and pitch myself all around. Like I should, if I wanted to leave the agency, I should have been able to step into it from there. And so why, like, I want to just, it should come to me. There's like that kind of sort of defeatist side that I know is bullshit as I hear it in my head. But it's like, it's hard to get off of that pedestal where you're like, I was doing the thing. Why? Like, I should have just been able to keep doing it. So that's fighting with the side that's like, no, shut up. This happens. If you don't get fired in Hollywood, you probably weren't doing shit to begin with. And that probably goes for most industries, but I've never had a real job. And so it's that kind of split. And that split flips over 18 times a day, where you go from like sitting on the couch and then you're like, God, I didn't do anything today. And then you just do one little thing for yourself, and it makes you like, you kind of bounce back and you try to string a few of those together. But it's going from being at like 110% of like my focus to like 1% kind of leaves you with way too much time. And there are pitfalls. Like there have been times that I just feel like crap and don't want to do anything. But I think the hardest part is not, what you say to everybody else and the feelings of embarrassment. It's what you say to yourself.
Yeah, I completely, can imagine that feeling. And one thing I want to ask you very pointedly, this has been brought up a few times, individuals on this podcast that have, faced success and then maybe, faced some adversity. Can you just talk about, like, were there any moments here that you feel like a failure? And again, the reason I ask is because I hear a lot on podcasts about people that are winning all the time. And this is not a show that's supposed to profile losers, but I think every winner has lost more than anybody knows. So can you just talk about, like, what is it like to be like, damn, I'm a failure right now?
That was like the number one feeling that like I left with. It's easy to laugh it off with, hey, I spent 8 months as a Hollywood. I was like, damn, I just got this, agent, kind of this vaulted position, and I had it. And then to like lose it and not really kind of like have a satisfactory answer for yourself about where it went, and I totally felt like a failure, because, you pitch yourself to a client and you win them over, not only with like the concrete ideas you have, like,
yep,
this is who I love to write to adapt to your book, and this is why your voices work together like this. And then you're like, those are as close to hard skills like as there are, I think, in this job. But and so the rest of it is just like, I got you. I'm going to be your guy. I don't have like quit in me. So no, I'm never going to take no. And until there's nobody else with a checkbook left, we're going to be pitching this around. And then to like turn around and say like, hey, you're on your own now. Sorry. And
That's
it's not
tough,
really
man.
like you're on your own, like still working with some former clients in one capacity or another. But yeah, it's like you held yourself out to be their guy, and then you have to turn around and tell them, not only could I not get it done during the time that we were working together, I'm out of shots to take, and like I'm on the outside anymore. I'm not even on your team. Like that's a really tough thing, especially like the position I was kind of in. A lot of them weren't natural, like they weren't in the industry. They haven't studied it. They haven't like worked their way up for it. A lot of them were athletes coming in. And so
Okay,
those
okay.
people that like I had idolized my whole life, like having to turn around and tell them like when he's texting me questions about, hey, when's my meeting? I'm like, I can't do that for you right now. You got to talk to somebody else, and having to pass along definitely, like, to answer your question finally now, hell yeah, felt like like from minute one, and it's another loud voice that rings out. But it's like I truly believe this, and it's not just because it makes a nice clip for a podcast. You only fail when you stop trying. So I figured until I finally leave LA in the rearview window and go hide off in the woods someday. I don't think I've failed just yet. Certainly, I'm not an agent anymore, and that didn't go the way I wanted it to. But it feels like just a setback more than the end of the road.
I love that, man. And candidly, like, I didn't realize how deeply personal this industry can be. Like, it does feel to me like you kind of have to lay it all out there for your clients. And I guess I didn't have the proper appreciation that that can be the reality of working with these individuals. Do you regret giving it your all here, like, because it makes it harder? Or no, you wouldn't trade it and you would do it all over again?
I don't think I would have even gotten the chance to, step up to the plate if I hadn't given it my all. Like, you really, as I
Well
look
said.
back, and it's why I get pissed. Like, it's why, like, one of the big feelings is anger, because I'm like, I missed friends' weddings. I missed like my high school reunion. I didn't see my family. I saw my family twice a year, over the last 5 years, just because I was constantly here, constantly, and it added more stress to take a day off to go do something. And so, circling back on what the question was again, yeah, it was worth it to kind of get to play in the rooms that I did, and have the conversations, and still also have all of that under my belt. It's not like I forgot it all, and it's not like the relationships and connections are nothing. I still know that everybody that I've worked with, I feel good about the work that I did, so I'm not afraid to like pick them up and call them. It's just swallowing that failure pill and being like, so this is what happened. This
Yep.
is what I'm doing now. Wanted to let you know. And if you want to figure out a way to work together, I'd love to do it.
And by the way, it takes some balls to do that, I think. I mean, you could shy away from this and try to make excuses. And look, maybe there's some value to the fact that maybe this wasn't 100% justified. But either way, the fact that you are owning it, I mean, I respect the hell out of that, man. You're like, look, this is the situation and we're moving forwards. I guess in closing, I'm just curious, like, what's next for you, right? I know, I've seen it in my life when individuals get laid off or fired or whatever you want to call it. They usually are stuck in their tracks. It's hard for them to get traction and they don't even know where to turn. So do you have a plan? Do you not? And if you do, what plan is that?
I would say I definitely sympathize with the people that feel like they don't have traction, because it totally feels like that way. You're like, and it's not just because you can't go forward. You're like, I don't know to go in that direction or this direction or back or where to go.
And
So
plus, we're also in our 20s, right? So it's like, is this even what I'm going to do? Is this in the industry where I want to be?
Yeah.
There's probably a bunch of questions going on.
And I don't know, maybe I'm doing everything wrong. Maybe the thing to do when you're on the job hunt is not go on a podcast and say, I got fired. This is how I got fired. And then maybe this will be yet another learning lesson for me. But no, I think what I'm doing right now is sort of what I mentioned. It's calling the people that I worked with and say, can we grab a coffee? Let's catch you up. Here's what I'm excited about, like, down the road. And most of those, the reason I would love to say I dressed up for you today, but no, I had a coffee, and 6 minutes into it, I lightly broached the question of, would you ever think about expanding your team into this space? Got the quick no, and then figured, all right, let's figure out what the next 24 minutes of this coffee are going to be.
But I love that,
We
man.
hit the
Like,
thesis up front.
that's so honest. You're like, that was the maybe part of the goal. Didn't go how I thought, and we move on. Like, but I love that you're out there trying.
A lot of them are fruitless, but like, honestly, it's so easy to get down in the dumps. So when you've got a reason to, like, dress up, think about it, write some notes down, really get your mind engaged. And that's outside of, the, like, definitely jumping on the hobby train. I've got a jar of sourdough starter in the corner. and taking back to COVID times, and you know, doing the things that I didn't give myself time for in forever, just like reading for fun because I was reading. I like it changed the way I read, having to read 5 books a week. So just like enjoying things again, enjoying movies again, watching my old favorites, and thinking about what is it about this that I really did love, and how do I do more of that without everything that cost me so much, all that anxiety, all that burnout, all that ceaseless stress that just invaded and honestly in a lot of ways changed who I was. Like you know, you can only be that stressed out for that long before you just kind of start to change a little bit. And I could feel that happening. So now it's a lot of it, as much as I'm aware of like, I got to get back to work. You can only kind of be on the sidelines for so long before, you know, maybe the trail gets cold. People aren't as like, oh yeah, I remember I used to work with you.
Yeah, right.
Is a tough thing to hear after a certain amount of time. So part of me is like, you got to like keep on it. And I think I'm trying to do as much of that as I can. But part of it's like just a rehabilitation of like of the mind and soul, like try to just feel like a person again.
Yeah, right. Well, look, dude, I cannot thank you enough. There's a reason I wanted to have this conversation with you, and the last 30 minutes have proved exactly that. I guess in closing, the last thing I would say is if anybody's listening to this that either recently got laid off or knows it's coming, do you have any advice to those people or anything that you think they should keep in mind?
I'm working through it with you. If you come up with advice, send it to me too.
Yeah.
But I honestly, the what I'm just telling myself is like feel everything. Like you're gonna be pissed, be pissed. You're gonna feel depressed, feel depressed. Like you're gonna like have days where you're like, no, I didn't shower today. And there are gonna be days that you have this manic energy to like email everybody in your contact list and rewrite your resume 6 times. Do all of it, figure out what works the best and feels the best, and figure out what you like really need. And I think it's super important to say, like I say all this, like coming with like I live in Los Angeles. It's a phenomenal place to be unemployed. Some people seem to be able to make a real living out of it. And I've got, you know, a support network around me that means the world to me. And I've got people that love me and want to help me out. So I'm so lucky and feel like so blessed to have all of that. And not everybody is in that position. And like, that's a much harder hill to climb again. But I think, yes, as much as you can, figure out what really is important to you and put your energy into that and making yourself feel like yourself again.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you
Thank
joining.
you, Mark.
Yeah, man, it's been an absolute pleasure, and this conversation is exactly what I want this podcast to be, which is like, look, life is great. Life can be sometimes challenging, and you're here highlighting what can be good about the bad. So thanks again for joining, man, and hopefully we have a round 2 sometime in the future.
I love that. You're doing a great thing here. Keep it up. And yeah, I'd love to see you again soon.